Hello.
Well, there it is.
Hello, hello.
Those are all people joining it. Hello.
Hello, here. I can hear you.
Is the audio on this thing?
Yes, we can.
Blaine, we can hear you.
Hello, hello.
We can. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, this is Laura Gates from the Rocky Mountain Emmys. I'm going to introduce Chuck in just a minute, but we're going to ask that because we have a really great turnout, we're going to ask you to comment if you have questions. So first we'll go through Chuck's presentation and then we'll have time for Q&A. And so if you can just indicate in the chat that you have a question, then you can unmute yourself in turn for your questions as we go. We've got about 2 more minutes till we're going to start. So just be patient and we'll be right there. I see your question, Allison. We are going to record this and make a link available, and you do have permission if you would also like to record it. Thanks for asking. If there's any students who couldn't join us, but we will also make that available on our YouTube page. So we'll share that link shortly. Chuck, I think it's about noon. You want to get started, and I'll keep admitting people as we go?
I think that's a great idea.
So let me introduce Chuck. This is Chuck Emmert. He serves on the Board of Governors for the Rocky Mountain Southwest chapter of NATIS. He's been with us for many, many years as a member and on the board. He works for the City of Phoenix as the video production coordinator. He's been a photographer in very many different newsrooms and capacities, but he's also a professor of videography at Cronkite. So some of you may know Chuck. He's certainly a wealth of knowledge both to the board and to other shooters in the market and beyond. So thank you for taking time to share this today, Chuck, and I'll let you take it from there.
Great, thank you, Laura. So, and welcome to all of our participants. I see 69, almost 70 participants right now. So as Laura mentioned, my name is Chuck Emmert. I'm with the Rocky Mountain Southwest Academy of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, so our chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. And so we are an awards organization. We bestow the Emmy Awards. So you can see some examples of the Emmy behind us here, and it is the premier award in television and in video production that is offered. There's none better. And as part of what we do as well, we also bestow an award on students as well. We call it our Student Production Award. And it has the same criteria as the Emmy, and that means that every single entry is judged by peers. So those are people that are actually doing the work, that are judging the work that is submitted, and that's why it's such a high honor. So thanks again for everybody for joining us today, and I want to get started right away here with the presentation. But before we do, a couple of ground rules. So let's just have everyone make sure that your microphone is muted right now, and if you have a question, enter the chat function on your screen there, and that will put you in queue with Laura for a question. The presentation takes about 20 minutes, and then we'll have time afterwards for specific questions going forward. So I'm going to share my screen right now and get right into the presentation here. And so here it comes. So I call this presentation here, Filming with Your Phone. And an alternate title for this also could be Becoming a Pocket Producer. So this is how it was. So we had this amazing technology, but before we talk about the future, what we have to go to the past. We have to look at where we came from. Back in the day, back in the 1940s, when film production was the type of thing that was just reserved for professionals. The cameras that you can see were these huge, monstrous pieces of equipment. It took professionals in Hollywood, New York, other parts of the country that ran these cameras, and for the common person at home, it was something really out of their realm, not only from the size of the equipment, but from the cost as well. So time went on, and as we evolved a little bit, cameras got a little bit smaller, and they got easier to use as well. So a little bit smaller and that kind of thing, but still they were pretty cumbersome types of equipment like that. So they were pretty cumbersome and pretty big that way. And I just kind of want to show you something here. I want to go back and I want to show you kind of an example. Laura mentioned some of my career, but you can see a picture here. This is me shooting back in the 1980s or so. And so we had these huge cameras like that. They were still pretty big. There was a cable that ran down to here. This little piece on the floor here was a videotape recorder. So the whole outfit was about 60 pounds worth of equipment like that. So you can imagine, here's some other shots of me shooting in the day with different types of cameras. You know, it was portable, that kind of thing, but still it was pretty heavy stuff to have to carry. And, you know, it took, I'm amazed that I can even still walk carrying that gear, but that's kind of the way it was back in those days. So, but let's go back to the presentation here. As time went on, cameras got a little bit smaller and easier to use until back in 1967, the very first home video recorder was available. It cost about $1,250 in those days, which was about the cost of a brand new Volkswagen in 1967. So again, they made them available, the Sony Corporation, for consumers, but it still was a pretty expensive operation, that kind of thing, that left that out of there. So let me see why that's not. Now, I've had the opportunity over the years to shoot, as I mentioned, with different locations, different kind of things, different types of equipment like that. I've always enjoyed videography, but nowadays, you know, it's so nice because everything can be done in the palm of your hand. What we have, whether you're shooting on an Android, an iPhone, whatever type of device you're working, is going to have a pretty good camera nowadays where you can just do one click and get a decent shot. But let me show you a couple of tricks here that make it even better. So here are some tips right here to create better quality photos. And then later in the presentation, we're going to talk a little bit more about better quality video like that. So right off the bat, you have to check to see how much storage you have available on your phone. So for example, if you're the kind of person that in order to take a picture, you have to delete one ahead of time on your phone, this is for you right here. So you can go into your settings in general, your iPhone storage. All this stuff is covered in abundance on the internet, but you can find ways to clear out some unused apps on your phone, old videos, things like that. You want to have probably, you know, at least 4 or 5 gigs worth of space on your phone for video and that kind of thing. So that's the first thing to do. Make sure you have plenty of space on your phone. And then the next thing, and this just seems redundant and obvious, but we have to clean that lens before you start. So, you know, phones end up in purses, backpacks, pockets, all kinds of places. They're just full of gunk, you know. So the iPhone and most Droids, all Droids really, have a nice glass filter over the lens. So you can use your shirt, you can use anything, a soft cloth, clean that lens and make sure that you get it clean before you take a picture. Now, speaking of taking a picture, let's talk about setting our focus and our light level. Okay, so this is one of these presentations here where it's okay to have your phone out and follow along with what I'm doing right here. So we're going to learn how to set the focus and the light level. So what I call this technique is the tap and slide section here. So what I want you to do is pull up your phone, frame up a picture, and then when you tap the screen, hold that, hold your finger on there. And so I'm going to demo this here, but I've got my phone up here and basically I'm going to photos like this, and my camera. And so what I'm doing is I'm holding the phone up like this, and then I'm tapping on the screen and holding my finger there. And you get a little yellow box that sits right there like that. So once you tap that little yellow box will blink a little bit, and that will set your focus and your light level for that spot on your screen right there. So let's go back to the presentation here, and I'll give you a demonstration of that. So this little yellow box will come up, and you'll have this little sun symbol like that happens. So the way this works then is I can tap that screen like this. So here's a live demonstration. I'm gonna tap with my thumb. I get the little yellow box, and then I can move my finger up and down like that, sliding up and down. That's gonna change the light level of my shot. So I have more control using this than just letting the phone decide which way to go. Here's another example of that right here. So this is Phoenix City Hall. I'm tapping the screen. You can see how I'm changing the light level, the tap and slide method. So I'm tapping the screen, I'm getting that little yellow box, and then I am going to slide my finger up and down to get a better light level. So that's good, a good way that you don't have to rely on the iPhone choosing the light level for you. You get something else. Now, speaking of light, let's use light to our advantage if we're shooting inside. So this is a colleague that I work with down at the City of Phoenix, and you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, she's next to a window. So the problem with this shot is here, we've got a great background, but it's brighter outside than it is on the inside. I don't have a light with me. So Deborah looks dark in this shot. So what I'm gonna do simply here is I'm gonna ask Deborah to turn around, and I'm gonna put the light from the window behind me like this. Now look at the difference in the shot there. I've got the window light behind me at this point, and it's just gonna make a much better picture that way. I'm not fighting the light, it's not backlit. I've got that light behind me. I'm gonna get a better shot that way. So if you're shooting indoors, always make sure you have the window light behind you. Now, let's talk about some composition techniques. So one thing I always try to do is I shoot two different ways. I'm gonna shoot vertically, and I'm gonna shoot horizontally. The reason being, if I'm going on social media, I'm going on television, I'm doing something for YouTube, I've got to have my choice of different types of aspect ratios, different formats. You know, YouTube uses this horizontal side over here. It likes that over there. You know, social media, some of it may be vertical. You know, Instagram is a whole different ball game. But I'm always going to shoot the same shot two different ways, horizontally and vertically that way. Now, another thing I like to do too is I like to make sure that I slide in my section on my phone where I can choose a square shot or a photo shot. I'm going to shoot a square shot and a photo shot, two different versions of the same thing. Because I know square, I'm going to use that for Instagram and probably Twitter. Photo may fit a little bit better in some other types of social media platforms like that. So I'm always going to have that choice, and I'm going to shoot multiple shots. Better to have it and not need it than need it later on and not have it, I always say. So I'm going to shoot two different ways, horizontally, vertically, square, and photo format like that. Another thing I like to do is I like to shoot one picture with the flash on and then another without. So sometimes the flash is a little bit too much, you know, it makes everything too dark in a way. So, but I always like to have that choice. So I'll shoot with the flash on, and I'll also shoot one without it off like that. Okay, now getting a little bit deeper into composition, we want to talk about the ability to add grid lines on your screen like that. So the way you do that is I'm going to go into my settings, camera, and then I'm going to turn grid on like that. So when I have the grid lines on, it looks like that. I've got those two lines horizontal and two vertical. And the reason I want that is going to give me the ability to take advantage of a composition technique called the rule of thirds. So this is something that goes back centuries. I mean, all the Renaissance painters, artists throughout the ages have used this technique to create more interesting images. Basically, the way it works, if you look at that, that image in the lower right-hand corner, you can see where those two lines intersect. If you put the main part of your subject where those lines intersect like that, you're going to have a better shot than just putting your subject right in the middle of the frame like that. So always have the grid lines up, look for spaces like that where those lines intersect, and you can see you're going to create a much better picture than just putting your subject right in the middle of the shot like that. This is called the rule of thirds, and like I say, it's been used for centuries. And it works with photos as well as video. Now, let's talk about some more composition techniques. So one thing I like to do is look for ways that I can put objects in the foreground of my shot. So here, this hotel you see in the background is an iconic old hotel in downtown Phoenix called the Westward Ho. So it's been photographed a million times since the 1930s when it was built. So what I'm doing here is I'm doing something a little bit different. I find a crane across the street. I look for the way that crane kind of creates an arch, and I'm going to put that object, the crane, in the foreground with my main subject in the background. This is an effective technique to add depth to your shots and create a more interesting image overall. Again, you know, here's another idea. Here's an old city hall, Phoenix Historic City Hall. So I'm putting some of the objects in the foreground like this, some people waiting and things like that. Makes the shot a little bit more interesting. I've got a sign up there that shows me what street it's on, that kind of thing. So always look for ways to put something in the foreground like that. Here's another idea here that I came up with. So this is an old grain mill, and I was kind of locked outside the fence on this one, but I kind of put my phone up to the chain link fence, and I got this shot with that light pole. Kind of, it's my object in the foreground. And it kind of makes a frame, nice little frame over the top of that old grain mill like that. Another example here, an old fence, an old house like that. Adds a little bit of depth to the shot, make things a little bit more interesting that way. All these shots, I'm using that tap and slide technique to get a good focus and also to adjust my light level like that. Another thing that I like to do is look for ways to get above the ground. So if you got a drone, you're lucky, but if you don't, you can always find a parking garage, you can find a staircase, something of that nature that gets you a little bit higher above the ground. That's going to make a much more interesting photo than sometimes being right there on the ground level. This shot here wouldn't be as impactful on the ground. I don't think you'd see those buildings as well. They'd be blocked by the trees, that sort of thing, but look for ways to do that. Another example right here, this is in a parking garage in downtown Phoenix. So I can just take an elevator up a couple steps there, a couple floors, and get some really good shots that way as well. So look for ways to kind of do that. Another technique for composition is called leading lines. So you can see in this shot, we've got a couple of railings right here on this old wooden floating bridge, and it goes off in the distance. So those wooden railings kind of take your eye and lead you through the shot onto the mountains like that. So I look for things like that that have, you know, strong vector lines to them that can create that kind of composition. This one here, I'm using the fence line here to kind of create a leading line with the house over there in the background. And then something like this over here has a roof line that creates a nice leading line, creates a nice triangle of blue sky in the center of that shot. So I'm always looking for things like that that can help improve my composition. Another thing that is often overlooked is just shooting upwards towards the sky, especially if you're in an area where you have some tall buildings. Going up towards the sky can create a dramatic kind of effect like this. And if you have some clouds in the shot, even better. But this particular shot right here, I found an overhead shade structure, a building behind it. So that creates a nice kind of composition there when you have something, again, in the foreground and you have your main subject in the background. But sometimes it just takes looking up into the sky to see what might be the best bet like that. These type of shots, if we do have a good sky, I may dominate the shot with the sky that way and look for better ways to include clouds and whatever weather patterns we're having at the time like that. Sometimes it's just as simple as looking for the absolutely brightest object that is in your shot. So I'll look around. Sometimes if I don't have any inspiration, I'll just look at whatever the brightest thing is and shoot that, because those colors really pop on iPhone pictures and really make a nice technique like that. Now, once I shoot a shot, I'm always going to make sure that I go back and do a little bit of editing with that as well. Here's my four go-tos for easy photo editing. I call it reduce and boost, okay? So if you go into any photo app, iPhone has an edit function, Instagram has a pretty good edit function as too, and they all do really, but if you reduce the contrast, boost shadows, reduce highlights, and boost saturation. Do those 4 things like that, and that will create, look at that, who's making arrows on my shot there? That's kind of interesting. So those are kind of the 4 things that you can do to really quickly make a better shot. You know, reduce and boost. Reduce contrast, boost shadows, reduce highlights, boost the saturation slightly that way, like that. Okay, now here's something else I wanted to show you in terms of taking pictures. I call the shutter trick. Okay, so old cameras, old SLR cameras like this one at the top had a shutter on the top. It was a button you pushed to actually get the camera to take the picture. On an iPhone, of course, you see the little white circle down there. That's where you can take a picture. But there's other ways to do it as well. One way to do it is to use the volume buttons on your phone. So if you have your photo app open and you've framed up a shot, you've touched the screen, you've focused, you set your exposure, that kind of thing, you can just touch either the plus or the minus on your phone, and that will trigger the shutter. That will take your picture. So this is a very effective technique to have when maybe you don't want people to know you're taking pictures. You can have your phone up, you can have a shot framed, and you can quickly touch the plus and the minus and create your shots that way. It's a good way to do that. Another thing that I like to do is I like to shoot photos in burst mode. So if I tap and hold my shutter, it will create a burst of shots, and then I can go back and choose which is the best one. So I walked outside my office door one day, and there was fire engine 1 was rolling right up 3rd Avenue, and I wanted to get a picture of it. So I went into burst mode and look at the shots that I got. So the first 4, not so good. There's one over there that's decent, but that light pole is blocking right in the middle of the engine. Finally, I get one there that is pretty good. It's okay. And I got a shot of the fire engine like that. But if I had tried to do that just by tapping the shutter multiple times, it wouldn't have worked as good. I'm going to tap and hold that shutter, and then that will go into burst mode and fire off about 40 shots a second. I mean, it's pretty fast. And then you can go back in your photo edit function and choose which one you like that. So now we've talked about photography, photos. Let's talk about ways to shoot better quality video, just like the pros in the field here, like this. So video is a whole nother ballgame in terms of storage and the type of size. There's a couple settings that are really good for shooting video. Number 1, I'm going into the camera app on my phone, and then I'm going to go into record video, and I'm going to choose 1080 HD at 60 FPS. That's 1080 high definition at 60 frames per second. That is a really good video format, and one that is used by the majority of television news operations around town because it's a high definition format, 60 frames a second. You know, you're getting a really good frame rate there that helps to capture the action. And the file size of this type of video is not a huge file size. It's a good file size that you can manipulate, and it'll look great on a phone. Now you see 4K underneath that at 30 frames a second. That's a good format, but it's a very high definition format. It's a big file size. And for a phone, you know, for viewing it on your phone or even maybe on your TV at home, you're not going to notice that much difference between 1080 and 4K. The difference is it takes the 4K video takes up a lot more space on your phone. So that's the disadvantage. But if you're at 1080p, 60 frames a second, that's a really good video format like that. Now, another thing that I like to do is I like to shoot in airplane mode. So shooting video on your phone, especially if you're shooting something where you're spending some time doing it, it's going to suck some power out of your phone. No kidding. I mean, it just takes a lot of power. So what I do to mitigate that is I slide myself into airplane mode. I make sure my Wi-Fi is not connected and my Bluetooth is off. So that's going to preserve my battery on my phone. The other thing that it does, it gets rid of all those annoying distractions where if you've got sounds set up on your phone when you get a text or a tweet or something like that, it'll eliminate that because those sounds coming in is going to mess up your audio that you're recording. And it's just distracting. So a lot of times I like to shoot in airplane mode with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth off, and I'll find myself getting some better. I can concentrate more that way, I guess. Now, speaking of sound, let's talk about that a little bit. So on your phone, make sure you know where the microphone is located. So on my iPhone, it's on the very bottom. So when I'm holding the phone, I'm going to make sure that I don't block that with my finger. I don't have my finger over the microphone and I'm causing it to rub and making some noise there or blocking the audio. I'm going to make sure that I kind of know where that mic is at, and I'm going to make sure that I'm careful with not blocking it like that. And then working with sound are some other tips right here as well. So one thing that I like to do is make sure that I get close to the sound source. So you can see over here on the left-hand side, we've got a press conference type situation. And you can see all the television crews on the tripod there. They had the advantage with sound because they could run a cable or a wireless microphone right up to the podium and get really good sound in their cameras that way. So I don't have that with my iPhone. And you can see this woman over here on the upper right-hand corner, she's shooting with an iPad. She's back by the television cameras. I mean, she's got a decent shot over there, but she's not really getting that good of audio because she's probably a good 12, 15 feet away from the person speaking at the podium. The sound's not going to be that great. So what I did in this situation, lower right-hand corner, I'm going to find the speaker in the room that's amplifying the sound. I'm going to go stand next to that, and I'm going to have that speaker sound close to my phone. It's going to give me a lot better sound. I'll be off to the side, but I'll still have a pretty decent shot, and I'm going to get a lot better sound that way. So I'm going to look for whatever the sound source is, and I'm going to use that as an advantage to make myself have better sound like that. The other thing that you can do, and this is kind of a cool technique, is you can use the earbuds that you have that came with your phone as a remote microphone. So everybody's had their earbuds plugged in, you've taken a call, you talk over your earbuds, anything like that. Well, when you're shooting video, it becomes a remote microphone like that. So let me see, oh, here we go. Okay, so it becomes a remote microphone, like a lavalier mic. So I'm plugging the earbuds into my phone down here, old phone, and then what I can do is I can take that part of the earbud where the microphone and the volume is, and just kind of loop that at the top of, on the top of somebody's shirt or top there like that. Then when I'm filming, I am getting the sound coming through that headset to be that's going to be my my lavalier-like sound. So it makes such a big difference. Let me tell you, the sound coming from a headset that way in this situation, shooting an interview, is far superior to anything you're going to get from just the little microphone in your phone. So this is a really good technique to use when you're shooting interviews or doing anything on your computer. Use the headset as a lavalier microphone like that. Oh, okay, wait a minute, I just got out of that. Stand by a second. So let me go back here. Okay, here we go. Now let's talk about some ways that we can maintain a steady shot. So number one, don't try to hold your breath. It's just not natural, and you can only do it so long. So you have to learn to breathe, and you have to learn to kind of get into a rhythm with your breathing. So when I breathe in, I notice that I kind of lean back a little bit. So when I do that, and I'm shooting, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to move my arms down a little bit, and vice versa when I'm breathing out, so I maintain a steady shot. That way I can continue breathing, I can stay alive, and I can still get a better shot that way, just by kind of getting in touch with the rhythm of my breathing like that. Another idea is to use a selfie stick for stability. So here is like a really cheap, like $3.99 selfie stick right here. So one way you can use it, you can see the picture on the upper left-hand side is using it that way, but it's kind of hard to hold in a long period of time that way when you're shooting video, and your phone's going to kind of rocking back and forth. So what you can do is flip it around, put the stick on your shoulder like that, and then hold the phone with two hands. So just that extra little point of contact, that third point of contact with the selfie stick on your shoulder, makes a big difference in the stability of your video, and it's a good way to use you know, some equipment that you already have if you don't have an expensive tripod or something like that to use as well. So let me go back one second, and I want to show you one other thing that I've developed here for that. So I'm going to stop the share for a second and come back. But this is something that I kind of put together because I'm working a lot with Zoom and things like this now. And sometimes what I'll do is I've taken right here what is the top off of an aerosol can. So this is like an old Windex top of the can, and I can cut it out over here on the sides like that. And then with that, I can put my phone in there, and then I've got sort of a mini tripod this way. So I can slide that thing. I gotta make sure it doesn't fall out, of course, but I can put that plastic cap in different locations on top of a bookshelf, something of that nature. And I've got sort of a homemade tripod that way as well. So that's kind of a good way to go with that. Okay, we're gonna go back to the presentation here. And like I say, if you have any questions while we're going on here, send Laura a message in the chat room, and then we'll get to the questions here shortly. So, so we talked a little bit about using the selfie stick like that. Another thing that I like to do when I'm shooting indoors, especially video, is I'm gonna turn my phone's light on, and that is going to give me an onboard camera light. So especially if I'm shooting an interview indoors or anything for that matter that's close up to the phone, I am going to turn my light on my phone, and I'm going to make sure that's on, and I'm going to get a lot better, you know, I got a light built in, a camera light that way like that. So you probably hear the weed whacker behind me. Some guy's whacking his yard out there, so we got a little noise coming in the audio, but other than that, we'll keep going here. Now you can get some pretty good rigs here, some useful accessories like this, portable lights, you know, this microphone over here in the corner, lower right, this is made from a company called Rode, R-O-D-E, and they make a really, really good lavalier microphone for iPhones and things like that. You know, the headset works pretty darn good though, I'll tell you, you know, it works really good. That Rode is going to be better, but it's about 120 bucks or so, so it's a little pricey. And then also what I'll do, you can see that USB drive up in the upper right-hand corner. So that is one there that is a USB stick on one end, and the other end will plug into the lightning port on my phone. So I can download photos and videos to that. And that way, if I get into a situation where my phone's full, I can always do a little backup like that. And then I can delete some photos and I'm good to go. I know I got a backup with them like that. So. Now, one last thing in terms of sharing video files, we have to get the video off the phone and we have to go into the computer. So, you know, email is really not a very good option. Most email programs will kind of compress the video and the stills too, and it degrades the video quality. So I don't use email unless it's just like absolutely, you know, a last minute thing or something like that. I like file sharing services like Dropbox that will preserve the original aspect ratio, the size, everything of that nature. Apple devices, you can AirDrop. You know, you can send your files from your phone or to your Mac and vice versa using AirDrop. Google Drive's a good option. You know, social media, you can post there and take photos down, but look for options other than email. There's a lot of different file sharing services out there now. And that way you can get the photos off your phone and maybe into your computer or laptop for editing and that kind of thing like that. Now, I always get this question, what are my favorite photo apps? So I just updated this the other day, and I am looking at these top 10 right here. This will be shared with everyone as well. But there are so many cool things out there for your phone to add textures, graphics, you know, but it really all starts, you know, with that shot. You know, you've got to have that that shot with your camera already in place. You know, it's a good raw video file before you add the filters and things like that with it. So the tap and slide method is a really good technique. You know, we talked a little bit about using the headset here as a lavalier microphone, putting that in and then shooting this way and getting, you know, getting a shot where, you know, I can record myself that way too. And I talked about the shutter technique too. I mean, using the plus and minus volume on your phone as your shutter. Another thing you can do, if you have the headset connected, the volume button here on your phone works as a remote shutter as well. So sometimes I can shoot a shot this way. I'm using this to actually click the shot and get the shot that way. So it's a good way. You're not tapping your phone and maybe making it jiggle a little bit. A good technique there like that to create some good quality pictures and video as well. So that's what I have for right now. I see that we have some people queued up there in chat. And Laura, if you just want to kind of identify the person, and we will go from there.
A couple people asked if this will be recorded. It will be. We'll put it up on our Rocky Mountain ME YouTube page after this. There was one request for a still shot of your high-tech tripod with the aerosol can. So if you could email me a photo of that when we're finished, I would appreciate it.
Okay.
One of the questions that came up in chat was some tips other than your selfie stick, other ways to hold it steady. Do you have any life experience from that?
Right, so that is a good point, holding it steady. I showed the technique with the selfie stick and things like that. A lot of times what I'm going to do is when I'm holding the phone, I'm going to have my, there's my plus and minus buttons on the top like that. So I'm going to kind of keep one hand up there, and I'm going to kind of cup my hand this way around the phone. The other side over here, my microphones are down in this area. So I'm going to kind of cup my hand around that way as well. And I put my thumbs on the bottom. The thumbs give me a good support that way. And then just on this side, by kind of cupping my hand, you can see how I'm doing that. It's almost the same thing, as cupping your ear to listen for sound. The sound's going to be directed a little bit more efficiently in that microphone. And then I've got a good two-handed way here. And then sometimes what I'll do is I'll kind of back my elbows in tight like this, and I'll put it close to try to just kind of put my elbows towards my hips that way and maintain a steady shot. Another thing that I do that I think works really well is I'm going to find something to lean against. If I'm outside, maybe I'm on the beach or something like that, I'm going to look for something that I can go against and lean against and give myself some stability that way. And then finally, I look for things like this, anything that I can put the phone down on this way, hold it, and then I've got controls this way, but just anything that I can use as a prop really for the phone that way.
And there was a question in chat from April. What free photo editing apps do you like? Was that in our link? I can post that link again.
Right, yeah, so there's 10 at the end there, and April, all those apps pretty much come free. And the way it works, they offer you like a limited functionality with the free apps, and then they want to upgrade like that. But my favorite really is one called ProCam. That is a really good photo app because it turns your iPhone into a DSLR. You have a lot more control over aperture, shutter speed, things like that. That if you've shot with a DSLR, you know about those and how those can really be useful in photo composition and photo quality. So ProCam is a really good one, and they have a free version of that as well. But that one's a fun one to play with.
Chuck, Marcus asks, what's your preferred setting for the photo size? 13 MP, 9 MP, etc. Do you have a preferred one that you like?
Yes, thanks, Mark, for that question. So I always go for the highest quality setting, and it changes with each phone, but the difference in file size is not going to be that great. But sometimes when I'm posting, especially social media and things like that, I'm going to scale the shot. And I may not use the whole shot, but I may only use part of it. I may, edit and crop. And so if I had that, I want to have the highest quality photo so that when I do expand it or scale it, I don't lose quality in the photo and have it go soft. So I just go for the best.
I did get a private question saying, did Chuck earn all of those awards and what for? Would you give us just the 30-second version of your awards?
Oh, well, I've been fortunate to work with some really good people over the years. And so, yeah, I did earn these awards. There's several Emmys back here from my days with Channel 12 News here in Phoenix. And I worked for a while with the Arizona Game and Fish Department, and most recently with the city of Phoenix, and was lucky enough, like I said, where I work with some great people and got some of these. I've got one here from, this is from the New York Film Festival. I'm pretty proud of that one there for a program that I did. This one here is from our chapter. So we have a thing called the Silver Circle Society. So it's people that have spent at least 25 years working in the business and producing and that kind of thing. That's for. And yeah, so that's, you know, I don't like to brag about those, but I've been fortunate, like I say, to have some really good people around me.
Thanks, Chuck. What is the handle of your City of Phoenix Instagram that is so widely followed so that folks
okay,
can follow
great,
the
good
progress?
question for that. So our Instagram at the City of Phoenix, you'll see I post there twice a day. It's City of Phoenix AZ. Let me say it again, City of Phoenix AZ, all one word. Yeah, follow that, and I'm posting twice a day, and you'll see a lot of the techniques that, I mean, I do it every day. I use the techniques I talked about in this presentation to kind of boost those shots like that. So City of Phoenix AZ.
And Ella asks, do these tips work the same as if you're taking pictures of people, of human beings? Are there any special tips when it comes to photographing them?
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. You know, they do work the same. So when I'm photographing people, where I set my focus is on the person's eyes. So if I had a shot of me right now, I'm going to tap that screen and make sure I tap right on my eyes, set that focus there. I don't want the focus to be in the background over there on the wall and have me slightly soft in the shot. So that's what I do every single time. You know, I mean, with a zoom lens, I would zoom right into my eyes and focus, but that's the most interesting, most important part of a person is their eyes. And that's where you want to set your focus like that.
Let's see. There's a question. Somebody recommends LumaFusion for editing on iPhone and iPad. Have you used that? Okay, that was a recommendation from the group.
Oh yeah, well I haven't tried that one. You know, it's like every day it seems like there's a new one out there, but you know, it all comes down to really what you're comfortable with, you know, because everyone has a little bit of a learning curve. So I've got a few favorites that I use. I use Adobe Spark a lot. And, you know, I'm sure there's other ones out there that maybe are better, but I know it so well. So I can like put my photos in there and I can crank something out in seconds like that, just because I know it so well. But yeah, I encourage, you know, sometimes I'll just, for fun, you know, I'll go searching and I'll find a new one and I'll go, oh, look at this, you know, I'll bring that down and add a new bit of creativity. So you're always, with those apps, what's really cool about them is you're always kind of able to reinvent yourself a little bit. You know, you take some photos and you think, that shot's not so good, but then you put it in something new like that and it looks pretty good, you know, so you can kind of play around with those and create some pretty good shots.
Well, we're coming up on 40 minutes. We agreed we'd keep it short, but we had a really great turnout. The meeting was capped at 100 people, so some folks missed the beginning. We will post the recording, so if you had students that couldn't attend or if you had to drop off or came late, we'll post this at the Rocky Mountain Emmy YouTube page. We plan to do a couple more of these on different subjects, so stay tuned in your email for more in this series. But thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. And I encourage everybody, you know, when you go to our website, look at the link for the Student Production Awards. So those are, again, awards that are reserved for high school and college students. And, you know, we have a big event where we we present these awards, and it's just a great thing to have, you know, for your mantle. As well as personally like that. But look at your video and look at the categories we offer and enter that contest. You know, it's free for high school students. So, you know, there's no reason not to enter like that. So look at those, and I encourage you to enter, and I look forward to seeing your work.
Thanks everybody for being here, and we'll put the links on our, if you need a direct link, we'll put it up on our Facebook page. It's Rocky Mountain Emmy. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. Happy shooting, everybody. We'll see you around.